I'm a senior associate at Business Forward. On behalf of the team, we're so glad that you could join us for our interactive training today on What's Your Spiel. So today's training will focus on best practices on better positioning yourself with media, legislators, partners, so that you can start advocating in your community as business leaders. As I mentioned, today's session is interactive, and so we really look forward to hearing from all of you. Just before we officially get started with the training portion, I just want to cover a few ground rules so we're all on the same page. After today's training, we'll share the training PowerPoint presentation used and any additional resources that were discussed. Just for sound quality, we ask that everyone remains muted unless you're speaking. We are recording this so we can send it back out to you. So just want to mention that as well. And then lastly, if you feel comfortable or if you're able to, we'd really love to have your guys' cameras on. It's really great to be able to put faces to names, and it'll help us feel like we're all at the table together. And so everyone on today's call has hopefully spoken with either Thorin or myself or our coworker Devin, and has indicated an interest in either writing an op-ed or letter to the editor or speaking out in some way as a business leader. And so we want to thank you all for your high level of engagement. We're really excited to continue the good work together. So yeah, let's get started. I'd like to introduce our resident expert in strategic communications, Christine Mickelson. She's an senior account manager at Spitfire Strategies. So yeah, Christine, I'll hand it off to you.
Wonderful. Apologies that I'm off video. It's tough to screen share and be there, but I'm smiling at all of you. I'll also be presenting today with Annabelle Gardner, who is a vice president at Spitfire Strategies, and she'll be taking over a little way through the session. So what brings us here today? We're going to be talking about your spiel. You'll get a chance to craft compelling descriptions of your work and why it matters in 90 seconds or less. And then we'll provide some messaging tips and tricks on how to engage your audiences, including the media and people in your community, in a concise and meaningful way. Some people call this an elevator speech. We call it a spiel, but it really is just a conversation starter. And again, a clear and concise intro to your work and why it matters. And now we're going to see if my screen, if you're able to see me. Did my slide deck move?
Sadly, no.
No. Let's see.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. And can you still see it now?
Yes.
All right. That's going to be fun. Okay. So today's agenda. First, we're going to spend the first 30 minutes or so discussing what this introduction is and why it's important that you have one. And the focus will really be on what your spiel is about an issue that you care about as a business leader. This is different from your spiel about your own business. The goal isn't to sell products, but to start a conversation with decision makers about policies and practices and issues. Then we're going to go over the 4 components that go into making a good spiel, and then we'll practice together creating one of those for yourself. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about how this actually gets used, how you use it, how to make it easy for other people around you to use it, and that'll pretty much wrap us up. All right. So the first piece is just, how do you talk about your work? It's likely that everybody here has been in a room full of people who are related in some way to the work that you do or the issue you care about. It's at a conference or a networking event, a meeting, or even a casual happy hour. These events, you come across people who are important to your work in some way, and they could be potential allies or volunteers or supporters, people that can really help you move your cause forward. These are all huge opportunities to engage people and potentially get them involved. But sometimes it goes a little bit like this. If everybody is familiar with Michael Scott from The Office, he says, sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. I think we've all been in this position, just like Michael Scott. Someone asks us what we've been up to recently or what's the latest with our work, and we aren't quite sure what the point is or where we're going. What often ends up happening is we stumble along the way and we hope the other person gets the information that they need out of the conversation. But we weren't sure if our points were clear or if they really took away from it what we wanted them to, which means we didn't take advantage of that opportunity to bring them into our work. And that's where an elevator spiel comes in. People are busy. These days, there's so much communications clutter, so much noise. Everybody is inundated by messages from a lot of other people who want them to get involved in their causes. And you have to find a way to cut through that clutter and grab their attention. It's incredibly important to have a concise and compelling way to talk about yourself so you don't end up in Michael Scott's position. And so you can quickly explain who you are, what you do, why it matters, and why they should get involved. You have to have your story down so you can share it with others. An elevator speech can help you make sure you are prepared so that any opportunity to communicate with an important audience member doesn't go to waste. While it's commonly referred to as an elevator speech or an elevator pitch, this tool is much more than that. It should not only be used in elevators. In fact, it almost never is. It's also not something that should turn you into a used car salesman. It should be consistent and concise and compelling, but it should happen in a very short amount of time in a really authentic and memorable way. It's an opening or an intro to what you're hoping will be a much longer conversation. And if it's done right, elevator speeches aren't really speeches. They're an opportunity to share your passion, your gratitude, and relevant information with decision makers, and it often sparks a much longer conversation afterwards. So the do's of an elevator speech. The first is to be brief. Again, it's just an introduction to a longer conversation. An effective elevator speech should leave your audience wanting more while also answering all of the essential questions about your work. It should be clear, no jargon, no acronyms. We all have our own language at work or in the office or in the work that we do that those people understand, but people outside of those spheres really have no idea what you're talking about. So for example, when I say I work in strategic communications, people are often left not really knowing what I do. But when I say I really help people tell their stories, that becomes a lot more clear. So we really want to use clear, simple, plain language so that anyone can understand what you do. We also want this to be passionate. If you don't sound like you care about your work or your cause, other people won't either. So you want to use emotional language. It's okay to put some of that fire into your speech. And then the last piece is to really focus on the why. When you deliver your pitch, most people will be unconsciously saying, so what? And you really want to answer that for them. And I give an example here. As a small business leader, I care about creating more green jobs. That does tell what you do and what you care about, but it doesn't say why. This last piece at the end is really going to fill in the blank for people. And it's because green energy is the key to keeping America's economy competitive in the global market. You really want to get down to that why for people. And then the don'ts. You don't want to just repeat your mission statement. Mission statements are great, but they're usually really carefully crafted legalese that are good for a website. They're important, but they're dry and sometimes they're passionless and often a result of a lot of board members and lawyers locked in a room arguing over which words will offend no one and likely don't mean a whole lot. So you really want to bring the passion here. You also don't want to give a history level lesson on your organization. Most of you, for what the work that you've been doing or how you got introduced to your cause, that history lesson is going to take a lot more than maybe an elevator ride. And it'll also lose people along the way. So avoid the history lesson. You also don't want to deliver a monologue. If you're doing a good job, they'll want to talk to you. They'll have questions and it'll be more of a conversation. So when you're giving a spiel, remember, once you're finished, to listen to the responses, engage with questions, and build time to listen to the people that you are trying to engage. And the last thing is, your spiel is not a script. You don't want to memorize it or say the same thing every time. We're really just giving you the tools so you have the important elements you know you need to hit. And our last big tip before we go into the components is that your audience matters. You want to say different things to different people because everyone cares about things differently or in a different way. So we want to tailor that spiel to whoever your audience is. A legislator who's worried about a budget is going to want to hear about how your work does more for less. A community member is going to want to hear about how you're improving lives in your community. So always keep that in mind as you're building these out. They're going to change slightly depending on who you're talking to.
Great. Hi, folks. So it's important. So I'm going to talk you through the different elements of like what makes a great spiel now that Christine set us up. But I'm going to start by sort of focusing on the importance of considering the tone you use. And we talk about this a lot in our messaging pieces, but it's really important that not only you're showing your passion and your commitment to an issue, but you're also reflecting your values in the way that you talk about the communities you're working in and the folks that are sort of most connected to the issues that you're talking about. So as part of your elevator spiel, you always want to be thinking about like, how am I characterizing the people and communities that I work with? Am I using strength-based language, which may be one of those jargon terms that Christine mentioned. But basically what we mean when we say that is like, are we emphasizing the strengths of people as opposed to the challenges that they face? So for example, I used to work in the mental health world and did mental health advocacy. And one of the things that we always tried to avoid was calling people the mentally ill, right? So that's like emphasizing a challenge someone is up against as opposed to the strengths that might come along with the challenges that they're up against. So instead we would say something like people with mental illness or people with mental health concerns. And that's another way just to think about like, are we accidentally reinforcing bad narratives about communities as we're talking about these issues? So like and one way I think we can help try to avoid that is to name, when we talk about like a problem, is to name part of why those problems exist. So like, why is it that some communities are not opportunity zones, and sort of naming some of the structural barriers, because it not only helps us better understand what solutions are possible, but it also helps us sort of counter some of these bad narratives about communities that we are part of or that we're working in. And then lastly, it's just a reminder that like whatever you use to talk about the work that you do, to talk about the issues you care about, does reflect your values and helps you to sort of engage on the emotional level with whoever it is that you're talking to. So the four main components of a elevator spiel is first the strong opening. So like Christine said, this is like to get someone, it's like the appetizer before the meal. So it's to get someone excited about what's coming, excited for a longer conversation. And you've got to start with a strong opening. So there's a couple different ways to do that. And you can really pick one based on what makes the most sense to you. But the first one is like start with a tagline of some sort. So this is one of my partners that I work with, Dove, and they have what's called the Dove Self-Esteem Project. And they work to ensure that young people, especially young girls, have opportunities to build self-confidence and body positivity. And this is a particular project they did around detox your feed. And it's all about how young girls get toxic beauty advice on social media, and that causes low self-esteem. Join us in our mission to help every young person detoxify their social media feeds today. So even just like the term like detoxify your feed is something I want to hear more about. You've sort of got my attention. I maybe haven't thought about this issue in that way before. So it's a great sort of starting point for a spiel. Another thing you can do is share interesting fact. That's another great way to have sort of a strong opening. And it could be like a question like, did you know that, and if you go to the next slide, Christine, This is a great one from Kiva. So more than 1.7 billion people around the world are unbanked and can't access the financial services they need. And that's like one of those stats where it's like, whoa, that's a lot of people. I'm interested in sort of hearing more about what you have to say. So you can think about an interesting fact that either surprises or shocks people so that you sort of have their attention as you continue in your spiel. And then the last way is, again, like a statistic or a story. And I personally love when people tell actually like personal stories about why you care about an issue. And I think this is a great example of how to use sort of your voice as a business leader and your experience as a business leader in a spiel. So what story can you tell about why you care about, like how your experience as a business leader makes you care about things like opportunity zones, right? Why is it that as someone who's been doing this for 20 years, you've decided this is the thing that matters most? So like leaning into a specific statistic or a story that can help, you know, get people interested can be really powerful, and also sort of gives you some like gravitas or some background into like why are you the person that should be talking to them about this. So the next sort of thing, so once you have that strong opening, you've caught their attention, it's time to talk about the need or the problem, or even the opportunity, if we want to be a little bit more positive thinking. So what issue is it that communities are facing? What is it that other business leaders are facing? What is the problem that you're actually trying to solve? And you want to give the listener the context for your work so that they can understand why it is that you do what you do. So inflation is a perfect example. Gas prices are higher than they've ever been for everyday Americans. And this is why we need to be talking about green energy, right? Like whatever that need or problem is, giving some context to people is really important. And then next, you have to talk about the solution. So again, when we're engaging people on issues, even if it's for a really quick elevator spiel, we don't only want to talk about the problems because that is not activating. It probably doesn't lead to further conversation. We really want to emphasize solutions. What is the unique response or solution that you're promoting based on your experience that they need to know about? So maybe it's how your business is solving the particular problem. Like, how are you making green energy more available to communities in need? Or maybe it's a solution that you sort of are pointing to on a more sort of national or federal level. So let's say the Build Back Better, platform, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're naming what the solution is and how it will address the problem. And then the last piece is action. So again, you're not having a conversation just to have a conversation. You are doing your spiel because you have a specific objective and audience in mind. And so you have to make sure that you're closing out with the action that you want someone to take. So is it that you want to set up a time to talk again about this? Is it that you, let's say you're using this as part of a one-on-one meeting with a legislator and their staff? Like, what action do you want that legislator to take as a result of the solution that you suggested? So having a simple call to action is really good. And I would always say that you have to sort of right size the action or the request based on the relationship. So you've probably heard me say, like, you would never ask someone you just met to like drive you to the airport or help you move. Like, that's something you keep for friends and family. And the same is true for the kinds of asks that you want to make of people that you're just sort of connecting with. So if it's a spiel, likely you haven't met this person before, or you're in a new sort of budding relationship or whatever it is. So you want to make sure you're not asking for literally, you don't want to sit down and ask for $1 million in the first meeting with somebody. You want to right size that action based on sort of building a relationship. So most of the time, in a spiel, your action will be, let's find more time to chat, or I'd love to send you some more details about our work, or I'd love to invite you to Business Forward's like next briefing. That kind of stuff is the level of action we should focus on. So here's another example. Another one of our partners, Ben & Jerry's. And again, this is a great example. It's like, we're talking about ice cream, but we're not really talking about ice cream, right? So The strong opening here is we believe that ice cream can change the world. We love making ice cream, but using our business to make the world a better place gives our work its meaning. Guided by our core values, we seek in all we do at every level of our business to advance human rights and dignity, support social and economic justice for historically marginalized communities, and protect and restore the Earth's natural systems. In other words, we use ice cream to change the world, right? So this is a great sort of appetizer for a longer conversation about what their programs look like, what actions they want people to take. But at least it sort of gives you enough information. You're like, wow, that's really interesting. I'd love to learn more. All right, so as promised, we are going to give you some time to sort of play around with this. And I'm going to drop in a worksheet here into the chat that sort of highlights the different pieces of or components of a spiel so that you can sort of think through this a bit. And I think it's important to sort of name that, like we said, this is not about selling a particular product. This is about using your voice as a business leader to advocate on a particular social issue that you care about. So the solution is usually sort of connected to what Business Forward calls like the business case. So what solution do you recommend based on or coming from a small business leader's like background? So I think what we can do is like give folks like 10 minutes to drop in, go into the worksheet. You'll need to make a copy so that you can edit it, and then drop in some sort of key ideas. Maybe it's even just bullet points for each one of these components. And then we can share what folks come up with when we get back. So let's come back at 1:40 p.m. Eastern. And you can go off camera, you can mute, whatever you need while you build out your spiel. So thanks everyone for sharing. Like I said, we'll send around the deck, we'll send around the worksheet. We'd love to hear how, and I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background if that's annoying, my bad. But if, we'd love to hear how you're using your elevator spiel, and if there's any way we can support you, let us know.
Great. Thank you, Annabelle, and thank you, Christine. And thank you to all of you who have participated in today's training. For those of you who would like to put today's learnings into action, Business Forward can help support you as you write an op-ed or an LTE, or speak to the media or your legislators. You can reach out to Thorne or myself for next steps, including an opportunity to draft a short statement to get the process started. So again, thank you to everyone who joined today's training, and especially thank you to Annabelle and Christine for supporting the business leaders on this call. We really look forward to working with all of you.